Yes, hi, it's Jonathan Bostock here, Birmingham Gems and Your Place, Your Space. We're down at the Prince of Wales in Birmingham for one of our fireside chats and creative conversations. And we're going to meet the inspirational Poet Laureate for Birmingham, Jasmine Gardosi. Yes, hi, Jasmine.
Hi there.
Tell us about your journey, your creative journey, please.
Yeah, so I have always been very, very interested in writing, in being creative in whatever way I can. I wanted to be a novelist. Hope it's not sacrilege for me to say that as a poet. No, I wanted to be a novelist from a very young age. I wanted to be the youngest published novelist in the history of the world. At like 6 or 7 years old, obviously writing my best-selling book at that age. And as I grew up, I realised that actually poems are much easier. No, they're not easier, they're shorter. You can spend months writing a novel, and then you're still not done, but a poem, relatively over, relatively quickly. I kind of say that to people, I kind of joke a little bit. I say, oh yeah, I'm only a poet because they're shorter than novels. But I think that there's a lot more to it. So I've always been passionate with writing. But what's intriguing, and I loved like performing as well. I loved the idea of performing, of acting. If you looked at me when I was a kid, saying even from 7 years old all the way up to being a teenager, you would have looked at me and you would have said, there's no way that kid is going to become a performer of any kind, or a public speaker, or anything public facing. The reason why is because I struggled to communicate, to articulate myself. I would mumble a lot when talking to people, whether it was my parents, my family, just anybody actually. I'd get very nervous. And as much as I loved performing, I couldn't actually read the words out loud. I would stammer quite a lot, get very nervous and hot and flushed, and that was, you know, when you have to read aloud in class,
Yeah.
like one paragraph at a time or something like that. That was the worst for me. It was horrible, and it's a shame because I really wanted to express myself, but I just didn't have the tools. I didn't have the confidence at that point, and yeah, it was just intriguing. So what I think started to change that is the creative writing club that happened at my high school.
And this was where?
Oh, this is King Edward's High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for girls. And there were just two teachers who very kindly gave their time to me. And well, to a bunch of us, to a club, and we just met every week, and then the RBSA gallery in the Jewellery Quarter, they'd take us there once a term, where our very patient parents and our very kindly teachers would come along to watch us reading out our latest stuff, whether they were poems, extracts of short stories or novels, and that's where I started to develop my own voice. That's where I started to develop speaking my stuff aloud, and I realized here are all these amazing people who are coming to support and watch us, and here is this poem of mine. I need to make this entertaining for them. I need to make this exciting for them. So that's how I started to perform my poetry. I didn't know what performance poetry was. I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that spoken word existed. I just did what felt right.
Mm-hmm.
And then my teacher said to me afterwards, you know, that looks a lot like performance poetry. I said, what's that? So I started to gain a fluency in looking at something down on the page and reading it out loud. And
Yeah.
I was committed to learning how to do that because I cared about my words. I cared about what was on the page. I suffered from OCD quite severely when I was younger, and I'd be writing poems about things like that. So that also like led to my speech impediment a little bit when I was younger as well. So that was really intriguing, that I really wanted to write about that. I wanted to communicate that, and that's why I got good at reading out loud. And so my confidence grew from there a lot. I think everything is related to confidence. So I also grew up queer, and also gender non-conforming in an all-girls school. As you can imagine, that is, I didn't have the words for it at the time. I didn't know that I was not, I was on the trans spectrum in some way, but I didn't have the words for it. But all of that, it all kind of adds to your level or lack of confidence when you're growing up. So that was just intriguing, how it was through poetry that I found my voice, I found my confidence. Because if you don't really know whether you exist or whether you're normal or whether you're okay, why on earth would you bother expressing yourself to people, to girls, to other people your age, to people outside your friendship group, even to people inside your friendship group? Why would you bother expressing yourself if you didn't know that you weren't, if you thought you were a perversion or something like that, to get deep? So my point is, it was poetry and self-expression that allowed myself to give myself the fluency, and then it became a strength of mine to speak out loud, to speak my own voice out loud. So I owe that to the Creative Writing Club at my school. So I went to university to study English after that, and that was in Exeter, so as far away from Birmingham as I could get. It wasn't because of the distance, it was because they did creative writing modules in the English course. I started performing a little bit when I was down there. At the old Birmingham Library, whilst the new one was being developed, there was a session called Poet's Place, which was run by Jan Watts, a former Birmingham Poet Laureate who is sadly not with us. She looked at my poem. For the first time, someone like Jan Watts seeing it and said, "Oh, this is awesome! You should perform at an event that I'm hosting at the Library Theatre." That's what it was called, for International Women's Day. So I think that was the first time I performed in Birmingham, which is just beautiful, and I was bricking it. She got me up last. I performed the poem. She gave me a big kiss on the cheek afterwards. It changed me more than she probably realised. And I also started going to events at the MAC, organised by Apples and Snakes. I met Bogdan Piasecki for the first time, who was working for Apples and Snakes at the time. He continues to be an amazing poet based in Birmingham. He was hosting Hit the Ode at the time at the Victoria pub on John Bright Street. I went along to that. I watched poets there like Polar Bear, like Holly McNeish, like Hannah Silver, who just changed my life, my outlook, my poetic, creative outlook. I finished university, came back, had a degree in English. I'm thinking, what do I do with this? Do I just, my lease ran out in Exeter, so I come home to Birmingham? Do I just apply for publishing jobs in London? So I moved back in with my mum. I thought, well, this would be, I'm only going to be in Birmingham for a little bit. I'm only going to be in Birmingham temporarily. Whilst I obviously go to London, where there are the only jobs that an English grad can do. And then I started going to some of the open mic poetry nights, like Hit the Ode, like Poetry Jam, run by Beat Freaks, which is now called Don't Settle. And noticing that, wow, there's a community out here. There's this thriving community of these open mic nights. Bogdan was such a huge help as sort of Apples and Snakes coordinator at the time. I asked him, do you have any kind of volunteering opportunities? And he handed over Poet's Place to me at one point.
Okay.
It had passed from Jan Watts to a few people over that time, and then it needed someone else to run it. So I started running that at the new Library of Birmingham, like a few months after maybe 6 months after I'd graduated. Didn't know what I was doing yet, but it was something that I was starting to do, like gather people in.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing yet.
Yeah.
But just listening to people's poems, maybe trying out a writing exercise or something like that. And I started performing. I started performing at these nights, these open mic nights that were happening in pubs, in the backs of cafes. Just there was a real life there. I'm thinking, gosh, this is amazing. It is the open mic arts scene in Birmingham that's kept me here.
Uh-huh.
It's the open mic art, not just poetry, but just the DIY art scene in Birmingham that sort of kind of saved my life, gave me my livelihood, because that's what excited me, that there was community there. It was also so DIY that you knew that you could add to it.
Yeah.
You could give it its own. You could put your own twist on it. You could make your own contribution to it. So that's what I was doing with Poet's Place. I also hosted a couple of events as well in coffee shops or the Dark Horse, and it's a communal. Everyone can contribute. Even if you're an audience member, you matter, because, for example, poetry events, they're not massively attended sometimes. So you matter as an audience member. Yeah. You matter as a member of the community. So from there, I just started attending more, performing more, realizing that people liked what I was doing, and I was getting invited to gigs. I'd get my first paid gig, and then I get another paid gig, and then I was helped along with development by Beat Freaks, by Apples and Snakes, until I gained more and more experience, and then eventually I applied for Birmingham Poet Laureate for the first time when I was 22. Just to give away my age, that was about 8-9 years ago. I was shortlisted, which was a really nice surprise, and I didn't get it. And obviously it was disappointing at the time, but I'd got to meet this panel of people who knew the scene in Birmingham really for much longer than I had, and that was amazing. I got to meet Jonathan Davidson for the first time, Brenda Reed Brown, through this panel kind of context. And what's intriguing is that because I was shortlisted but didn't get it, I was incredibly inspired.
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, wow, amazing, I got shortlisted amongst all these amazing experienced other poets. I can't wait to get it next time. And so the Poet Laureate position was happening every 2 years. Yeah. You apply every 2 years. So in the time of 2 years, I wanted to get better. I wrote better stuff. I upskilled myself. I did as much as I could. I just wanted to evolve myself. It was beautiful to have this thing to work towards. I started performing at more things, started performing outside of Birmingham, started running more workshops, and then I applied the next time. Shortlisted again, didn't get it. Guess what? I was even more inspired. I was even more inspired to do better, to become better. I applied 5 times, and each time I got better. The reason why I mention that is for anybody who's considering similar. There's no way I was going to necessarily get it when I was 22, but it doesn't mean that it's not beneficial to just give it a shot.
You learned so much from it.
Yeah, and now the worry is, now I've got it, maybe I'm just going to get worse.
Well, now that you have,
yes, yeah,
you are our Poet Laureate in Birmingham. What does it mean to you?
Whew. I think it's the 2 years is going to be a constant journey of reflection for me to figure out what I want my legacy to be. I'm going to be a different poet laureate to Casey Bailey or to Richard O'Brien, for example. I'm going to be different from, say, even Jan was. I need to put my individual stamp on it. So for me, one of the things I want to do the most is connect like all these disparate communities in Birmingham as much as I can, because I think that Birmingham Poet Laureate is often seen as a focal point, or can be seen, is positioned as a focal point. So I want to put myself as a bit of a focal point, a bit of a nexus for people. Because, for example, there are a lot now, after the pandemic, sprouting up in different places in the city. There are these amazing, new, different poetry nights happening, but they're not in touch with each other.
Over the next.
They don't know. I mean, I think 3 events are on at the same night in a couple of Thursdays, because they don't know that each other's on. So what happens if I can create some kind of platform or directory where people know about that, where I can start joining those events together and putting those communities in touch, but not just within the poetry community. I want to connect communities of poetry and beyond.
Yeah.
So music, for example. Over the past few years, more recently, my progression as a creative has also been leaning more into music as a poet and combining my poetry with music. That's why I've learnt beatboxing.
Yeah.
That's why I've developed a show
Yeah.
that combines poetry and beatbox and Celtic dubstep.
And there's a show coming up, Symphony Hall, I believe.
That's correct. It's called Dancing to Music You Hate, which is my show about gender identity, and it blends poetry, beatbox and Celtic dubstep.
And we've got to give this a plug. When
Yes.
is that happening?
24th of January. Tuesday, 24th of January in Symphony Hall. So just across there.
What a journey.
Yeah, amazing.
And, I mean, going forward to be at the Symphony Hall, what's next?
What's next?
What are you going to do after this?
I want to take my show on tour, national tour, so to places around the country, because I love the show. I love what it says about gender identity. It's relevant for everyone. It's not just for those who are trans or non-binary. It's for people who are straight, people who are also gay, people who are cis, so not trans. Everyone finds validation in it. And I know this because the show was commissioned by Warwick Arts Centre, so that's the first place that I performed the show with my band of 5 musicians. And people said to me afterwards, "Gosh, that was amazing. That's changed my whole perception of what gender is. It's liberated me as a straight cis person. It's liberated me," they've said. About what I can be as a woman or a man, or what's acceptable, what's enough. And they're spreading the word about gender, so I want to spread that. I think it also means something important, going back to the question about what does it mean to be a Birmingham Poet Laureate. I could be wrong, I don't know the full, I'm not familiar with the full roster of Birmingham Poets Laureate that we've had over the years, over the decades, but I think it's at least been a while, or maybe I might be the first openly queer poet laureate of Birmingham. And for me, I think that means something.
Jasmine, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations to the success so far, and enjoy your 2 years
Thank you very
as
much.
Birmingham's Poet Laureate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.